be delivering this big square bag, which which contains the express vote. That is the unit for challenged individuals or hearing or visually impaired. Actually, if you have a line and anybody can use it, really. So that's your discretion. We still recommend that a member or two of your board use it at the very beginning so that there are those express vote ballots in the ballot box. And in the event you have other individuals use the machine, then the ballots could not be identifiable. Okay. The ballot box contains a DS200 that's already programmed, and all you have to do is open it up, and Jody will go through the opening process here shortly. You will also receive the rolling supply bag, and that contains the supply box, your ballots, the provisional ballot bag with provisional ballots in, your express vote ballots, and the various supplies. When you do open that, you do not open that until election morning with your board present, but do verify that it is your correct precinct and any identifiable specific precinct material within it, verify and that it is correct. Along the side pocket is tucked, we call this the judge's envelope. And once it's delivered, you can retrieve this and review any information that's inside this envelope. And you also have the full manual in there, as well as clippers to snap the seals that are on your units. In addition to that, you will be receiving a bag like this. We're hoping that we can get them all in there. And that is PPE material that we are supplying you for due to the pandemic. You will have face shields. You will have tape to tape off distances for the individuals coming in, and we want to have that safe distancing honored as well. Along with that, we have signs. We have two signs. Two signs for each precinct, and you can post them in the appropriate places within your precinct to advise the voters of the distancing, and we want to honor that as well. You will have hand sanitizer, and there'll be more than that. A box of gloves, face mask, disinfectant wipes, pens. We will be sending as many pens as you are receiving ballots so that every voter comes in. You can issue a pen to them, and they will use it to sign a poll book, vote their ballot, and walk out with it as their pen. And that's to eliminate any of our workers having to sanitize pens. We're taking every precaution we can to not have the virus spread. I guess I know the question will be asked about masks, a voter coming in. We highly recommend it and encouraging. However, and I think the governor even had a press release that if a voter comes in without a mask, we cannot force the issue. And denying them the right to access the polling place would be disenfranchising them. So I do believe we are supposed to be getting some additional kits from the Department of State, and you could possibly have enough masks to offer one for an individual if they show up. But if they refuse, you do have to let them go through the process and vote.
We did have a question if somebody would want to supply their own mask, and I assume that would mean if you'd want to wear your own mask on election day, and you're more than happy to do that. We will be supplying, as per the Department of State has provided voter protection kits. It's going to be a surgical mask. So it's not an N95. We need to dedicate those to the frontline workers or healthcare workers, but it's not going to be a cloth mask. A cloth mask is something that's a little less is probably the least effective. But then a surgical mask is a little bit better than a cloth mask, and those are going to be distributed to each of the precincts on election day. But if you'd like to bring your own mask, I don't think there's any.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're more comfortable with that, absolutely. But we do require poll workers to be masked.
And the same with a voter coming in. If they bring their own ink pen, that's great. But we do have them to offer to them so that we aren't in a position of disinfecting. Also, and we recommend that you disinfect or wipe down the polling booths after every voter. We want to keep as much safety as possible, I guess I want to say. So, anything else?
Any questions? Did anybody have in the chat any questions related to the PPE? We had some good questions about can you supply your own mask, but any other questions? Okay, we don't see any currently, but if there are ones that come up, we will certainly get back to those throughout the video.
Okay, with that, we'll have Jody demonstrate the opening of the units.
Okay. As Joyce mentioned, you will receive your ballot box with your DS200, your express vote, and your big black bag with wheels that have all your supplies. And she also mentioned the judge's envelope. Inside of your judge's envelope, you are going to find stapled a smaller coin envelope. In this envelope will be the keys to your ballot box, along with the election code to open both the express vote and the DS200. It's the same exact keys, same exact code for each machine. Whenever you're looking at the equipment, verify that it is indeed for your precinct. For setup, it's always been recommended, and I do recommend it, setting up your express vote first. It takes much longer to boot up than our DS200 does. So I would start with that machine first. Joyce will get to it, but in the manual, there are step-by-step instructions on how to do just about everything. So for new people and even our seasoned veterans, if one person wants to read the instructions while the other person does it, we highly suggest that. It's very effective. Your equipment will come sealed. You'll need to cut the seals in the front. The supply, or the electrical supply to the express vote is housed on the side pocket of the container. And then when you remove the express vote, lay it flat on the face. So it's much easier to handle whenever you're trying to plug it in. Now it has a pesky little plug. For those of you that don't have experience with this, it can only go in one way. It's very specific. And also, I don't know whether it's a safety feature, but there's a sleeve on the plug that slides up and down. In order to plug it in and remove it, you have to lift that sleeve and then it'll snap in. We'll see if I can accomplish it on the first try. There we go. If the sleeve is not snapped down, it'll pop right out. And then you lift the tripod. It is rather tight, so don't get discouraged. And then set her up. It also comes with headphones, should someone need the ballot read to them. There also will be disposable headphone covers or ear pod covers provided should anyone need those. Oh, also, yes, we have a paddle for the visually impaired that has the Braille markings on it so that they can vote without any assistance from anyone else. That's just Velcroed here on the side. To open up and start the express vote, you'll use your barrel key. And there's an on and off switch. You just push the on switch until you hear it beep. and lock it back up. There we go. Now, as I stated, this will take a little while to boot up. So while that's happening, we'll get the DS200 up and running. The DS200 electrical cord is in the back. Everything is self-contained in this unit. Using the same keys, you'll unlock. Whenever you're taking this out, just ensure that the plug is plugged in tightly to the power pack to avoid any beeping issues or to ensure that the machine is running on the electrical power as opposed to battery backup. Plug this in first. There you go. Okay, and this door will not get shut or locked during the day. It must remain open. If space is tight, you can close it up a little bit and just let it rest on the back wall. As long as this machine is plugged in before you do anything else, the DS200 will boot up on its own. It'll take a few minutes for it to go through its processes and everything, but in the interim, you can be setting up the polling location to fit your needs and the flow of the individuals. Also, with the ballot box, the wheels are locking. So if there's a slight slant to the floor or something, you can lock the wheels in place so it doesn't move around should someone be leaning on it as well. Something new this time. In the past, we have only ever printed 1 0 tape because that's all that the machine would permit us to do. This time, with the new equipment, we can control the amount that's being printed. There will now be 4 0 tapes that are printed first thing in the morning. All the poll workers that are present will sign that 0 report. The same thing at the end of the night. 4 results tapes will print, and all of the poll workers that are present will sign that as well. Here, you're up and ready to enter the election code. That was found in with the keys. You will use the same exact code for each piece of equipment. The password is case sensitive, so be sure that you are using the proper cases. We do recommend that 2 people are here while doing it. That way someone can kind of be looking over your shoulder to ensure that you're hitting the right buttons. As this is loading, it will print it's a generic machine report, and then the 4 0 tapes will print. Here you'll see the public count as 0. You're going to want to confirm that that is indeed 0. What you're seeing below it, the protected count number, that is not visible to the public or to the voter. That protected count is telling you how many ballots have been through this particular machine in its lifetime. So while this is printing all of its reports, we can go ahead and boot up the Express Vote. Again, using the same exact code that you used to start up your DS200. Oopsie. It's been a long day. You'll see this come up, And you'll want to verify that the information is indeed correct. It'll tell you the name and the number of the polling location. It lets you know whether it's plugged in or running on battery power. And it's telling you, touch OK to finish opening the express vote. Now we're ready to vote. Again, it'll tell you the name of the precinct, the election date, and the county. Now that that's up and ready to go.
Party feature.
Oh, the party feature, okay. Because this is a primary, only registered Democrats and Republicans are entitled to vote for the candidates. So whenever the voter comes to the polling location, presents themselves and their name to the inspector that has the poll book, they will be given a card that's a Democrat or Republican, so that the people that are handing out the ballots are giving them the proper ballot. Or if the person chooses to use the express vote, whoever is in charge of the express vote will be given that card, and they, the poll worker, will select whether it's a Democrat ballot or Republican ballot that comes up based on the card received. Is that it? Okay, all right. We'll go back over here to finish start, excuse me, finish opening up the DS200. It's telling you here that all the information is inserted. Here again will be your polling place and number. It's telling you that it's plugged into the electricity or whether it's running on battery power, and we're ready to open poll. Now this one is only printing one because it's a demo, but 4 will print out for you on election day. And here is where all the board members will sign it. And then it'll tell you, you know, you're ready to accept ballots, hit go. So essentially we're going to go to vote mode. And you're ready. It'll tell you here, you want to confirm that your public count is indeed 0. It'll give you the name of your precinct and the election county and date. You're ready to start voting. A few things that we had talked about whenever the voter comes in to vote, the voter will give you their name. The person with the poll book will then announce that individual's name and the political party in which they're registered. Some of the voters are taken aback by it, but it is election code and that's the way it needs to be done. One of the big questions has been social distancing with the people that are coming in to vote and the poll book. One of the suggestions that we've had is to mark the floor approximately 3 feet back from the table where the inspector or clerk is sitting. I would present my name to the person with the poll book. At that point in time, she would announce my name, my political party, show me where to sign, and then slide the poll book to me. I would help myself to an ink pen, sign my name, push it back to her. Another option being, depending upon the space that you have and the resources that you have, if you have a 6-foot table, and instead of having it parallel to the voter, you could have it vertical. I, the voter, would be at this end. The clerk or inspector would be down there. I would announce my name. She would slide the poll book down to me, and I would sign it and slide it back. So all of that is dependent upon the layout of your facility, the size of your facility that you have. These ink pens, as Joyce stated, every voter will have their own ink pen. If you have the space to do it, lay them out along the edge so the voter can just pick them up, or have them laid out so that the voter's not touching all of them as they're trying to pick up an ink tag. That's what we would recommend. But again, all of that may have to do with space and time. But if you do, even if it's a couple, I would just put them along the edge there so that the voter can come in. I'm anticipating a fairly light turnout, so I think you should have time to be able to do that. What's next? Yes, the next person in line at the poll is the numbered list of voters. Have the numbered list of voters booklets. Both booklets need to be completed. They have to be or should be identical. What this is a list of everyone that has come to vote. So as the inspector is announcing the name and party, the next two individuals are writing the name and the ballot number. So if Tom Smith is a Democrat and he's ballot number 1, you're writing Tom Smith and then D1. Next person, whatever their name may be, and if they're Democrat or Republican, it would be D2 or R1, whatever the number might be. If and when someone were to spoil ballot or need to spoil their ballot, you would go back into the numbered list of voters booklets, find that voter's name. They would then mark void, or you, the poll worker, would mark void or put a line through that individual's name and then rewrite it on the next available line with their new ballot number.
Also, if they're going to use the express vote, they go in here as well, and you would put an X and then a D, and if it's 1. They are not numbered, so you can number them consecutively as they are requested. But designate, that question always comes up, how do we record that? You can put it EX or just an X. It's different from the rest of them. Okay.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah, so again, I'll put a message here for questions. And again, you can drop them where you see that little bubble come up and I just put test in there. You can drop your questions in there. But as of right now, we do not have any questions. As they come up, I'll be sure to.
Okay.
Yeah.
They also want to, the two people doing it should compare the books quite thoroughly or quite often so that they're in sync. So at the end of the night, whenever they're closing out, their books are identical. They have the same totals, and you're eliminating a lot of stress and problems when you, because you're going to use this to compare to the actual ballots process through the unit and save you a lot of time and headaches.
Yes. And whenever you're doing that also, and you're verifying that each of you have the same number, make sure it corresponds with the number of ballots that have been cast on that machine. That way, at the end of the night, you know at 5 p.m. you compared the number of ballots read through the DS200 to the number list of voters booklets, knowing that at 5 p.m. all was well in the world, and it just gives you a little more confidence if you check that periodically and make sure everything is in line, and it'll go much smoother than at the close of polls.
Right, when you're doing that, remember the number there could be less than what's in your book. Remember, go back and count your spoiled ballot because you're listing that individual maybe twice. Yeah. So by doing that, you'll balance out at night. We had a few boards through the years that was their holdup because they could not compare them and come up with an accurate balance.
Do you want to go ahead and we'll do the basic training through the manual?
So one of the questions while Joyce is making her way over to the manual was, let me get it here. It's from Colleen, and Colleen asks, we are down poll workers in our precinct. Is it still necessary for 2 people to come to the building to return the votes? And we've had this question occur on other trainings as well at the 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock.
Yes, it is the election code. And they come together. I think the last time it was, could they come in 2 separate cars? No. Try to recruit someone to accompany you. If not, call us. We'll see what we can what kind of a resolution we could come to. Or maybe another precinct would be coming through that you could buddy up with, you know, or close by. So.
Yeah, if you think about social distancing, if you're able to find a vehicle that is like a van or an SUV where you can sit as far as part, potentially crack a window, you know, as of the election code is written today, and we're hoping that the Department of State might take another look at that. But as of today, it is where two people have to come to return the votes. Okay. All right. We'll turn it back to Joyce.
Okay, we're just gonna quickly go through the basic manual. You will be receiving a manual in the judge's envelope, as well as 2 paper copies for other members of the board. And I think if you're a new judge or a new inspector, I think Jody emailed a copy of this to them that they
Yes.
could have as well. It's just a very light general review. On election day, you determine how to set up your polling place as feasible as possible. You know how the layout should be. The polls are open from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 at night. We still recommend you get there at 6 quarter after to give yourself time to set up and have everything in place and just relax a little bit before that 7 o'clock hour arrives. I usually tell them to sit back, have a cup of coffee, and catch up on the latest gossip. And, you know, we call it panic hour. There is a checklist for opening the polls. And Jody referred to that again. If you have one person read it and the other one do what it's telling you to do, you'll just walk right through it and it's in difficulty. And don't feel because I did it last election, I know what I'm doing. We all know from experience ourselves that, yeah, there's different steps, and if we think we know it, but it'll save you time and frustration. There is also the DOS opening procedure, DOS TS 200 opening procedure in the manual that also will give you a lot of guidance on that. The checklist for opening the polls, it tells you express what you should be doing. Your postings, distribution of the zero tapes, the whole 9 yards. There's an instruction for the voting process, which we somewhat went over. You sign a poll book. You ask the individual their name and address, and you compare what they tell you as their address with what's in the poll book. If it is different from what we have on record, then you can ask them to complete a form that's in the supply box, and it will come back to us and we will update it. Electioneering in the polling place, that is not allowed. They must be outside, at least 10 feet from the entrance of the polling place. However, if a voter comes in and has clothing on that has a candidate's name or a button, that is allowed, as long as they are not actively campaigning, discussing the candidates within the polling place. If you hear them doing that, you politely ask them to refrain from it and let them go on through. The poll book, and it does indicate in the poll book whether it's a first-time voter. That first-time voter must show ID. And that's one of the provisions. If they don't have ID, they do a provisional ballot. It also will tell you if they have applied for an absentee ballot. Always check a hyphenated name. Make sure you check both ways, whether it's the first or the second. Married names, they may have changed their name, but if you don't find it under the name, ask, could it be under your maiden name possibly? That type of stuff. The first time voter, we already covered. Absentee ballots. That is a change that you will see because absentee and mail-in ballots, you will no longer receive those ballots at the polling place to process at the close of the polls. They are now required to be retained here at Central Election Office and be counted centrally. And we will be doing that. If an individual voted and it tells you that they voted an absentee, They may come to your polling place. If they did not hand it in and submit it to us, then they would be required to vote the provisional ballot. However, anything to do with provisional ballot, we still recommend you call our office and we will verify whatever the situation is and either honor it or say no. If that individual has not submitted their absentee ballot, yes, the provisional ballot would count. If by chance they had already submitted it on Monday, which your report is not going to show you that it was returned because that report's going to be printed early, Friday probably, and they submit it and they still do the provisional ballot, keep in mind that when that regular ballot was submitted to our office, it was recorded and they have been given credit for voting. So when the provisional ballot comes back to us, we will validate it and we will find they already voted the ballot and that one would be void. So there is that safety net there.
We did have a question, Joyce. What will the poll book look like if somebody has voted absentee or by mail-in? How will it be indicated in the poll book?
It will be in the poll book where they sign their name. It will print mail-in ballot, absentee. There'll be an indicator there, absentee of some, and I believe it does specify mail-in as well. And there are two different categories. The same absentee ballot as it was before. For some reasons, you could not go to the polls. That's a regular absentee. And then the mail-in, and in plain language, we call it, you have a reason, and mail-in is no excuse, you just don't want to go to the poll. So it is designated, yes. So,
Okay, thank you.
but keep in mind, any provisional ballot does not sign that poll book, okay? And the provisional ballot is still the same. The first-time voter who does not have ID, their name does not appear in the poll book. It could be a court order. The provisional because of the mail-in now. But again, we recommend you call our office to verify what the situation is, and we will say yes, no, or given a provisional ballot. And there's cases where most of the time, during the day anyways, most of the time they are just at the wrong polling place. So because you can't find their name in the book. So you want to verify where they do belong. And we recommend they go to the precinct that they're assigned to. Voters can bring their children to the polling place with them as well. Well, there are challenge forms in the supply box. There is that provision, whether it's regular, individual, or even absent. Well, not absentee anymore because you don't have them. But anyways, if you have somebody who wants to challenge, pick up the phone and call us and we'll walk you through it, that process. However, a challenged voter still gets to vote, cast their ballot on election day. They are not disenfranchised. If somebody needs assistance, it could be marked in the poll book that it is on their master record. If not, then they must fill out, complete a form. And also there's a log for the judge also to log and list all the people that were processed and needed assistance. That individual can bring somebody with them, or somebody on the board could assist them as well, except the judge of election. They cannot bring their employer with them to cast their ballot, or a member of their union. So I know we always get the question, how would you know that? Well, we'll face that when we get there. You could have watchers at the polling place. They are be seated if you have enough equipment away from the table. They cannot interfere. They do have access to the numbered list of voters book at the judge's discretion. Now, if you're busy and they say, I missed the name, at the judge's discretion, they can come to the table under the supervision of the judge. They do not take the book and just scan through it. You may have watchers, and if you do, they will present a certificate to you that's been issued by our office, and make sure they will give it to the judge. Make sure you check for the embossed seal, because that makes it authentic. And then you give it back to them. They may only be at your precinct for an hour and then be going to another. It depends on who they're doing the watching for, and they could be rotating them to different precincts. The watchers do not bring their children with them. To be a watcher in a polling place would be disruptive. They do not sit there and converse on their cell phone. If they are doing that, politely ask them to step outside if they're going to be on their cell phone. Okay. There's also in the book the checklist for closing the polls, as well as a checklist for closing down your machines, and the DS200 closing procedures. There's also in the manual, it's orange, of what you're required to hand carry back to the Willow Bank building election night after you have completed and balanced everything out. There is a plain copy of this in the judge's envelope that you can literally take and check off. We have this, 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 and this. If you have all that, you will be good and can return to Willow Bank. Question now is, what is the procedure going to be on election night? We are not 100% sure yet. We could be just, as long as you have everything in place that you're required to bring, since the building is still closed, it could be just dropped. And we will have personnel outside, which we always do, to unload the equipment you're bringing back and retrieve your judge's envelope. But the key element on election night that we need is your USB stick, because that is how we tabulate the results for your particular precinct that night. So, or we could have you drop them and go to a holding area until we check everything that's in the bag and get in touch with you either via phone or email. You're good to go. So, but we will advise you have instructions on that with probably in the judge's envelope of what we have definitely decided.
Okay. We're going to go to the questions here. We've got a few questions. Let's see what we have. Okay. If a voter Amanda asked this, if a voter brings a mail-in ballot to the polls on election day, do we accept it?
No. Only an event, if it's a voted ballot, the law, the act says they are to be delivered to Willow Bank building. We do have a ballot drop box outside the building. We recommend that if they voted, if that's the only ballot they're going to vote, no. They could void it and then do the provisional, but they are not to be accepting voted ballots that were mailed to them, and recommend they drive it to Bellefonte, drop it in a box. That box will be available for drop-ins until 8 p.m., at which time we will retrieve what's in there and lock the slot.
And to go off of that, Joyce, if a poll worker on election day would have a voter come and say, I'd like to do provisional, but I really don't want to take this ballot out with me, I'd like to leave it here, where should a poll worker put that ballot at that point?
They would mark that void and place it on the top of the envelopes or their ballots at the end of the night. When they, in the big plastic bag, they will place their unused ballots or voted ballots, their spoiled ballots, and just lay it on top of that. Just have everything there accountable for.
Okay, thank you. All right, no other questions now. Anything else on that, Joyce, with the manual?
No, that's pretty much, but you know, if they are looking through it, they can either call our office. We will gladly answer any questions they have and assist them through it. But even on election day, they call that 355-6709. That's an unlisted number, and we have 4 and 5 lines connected to that to ring down, and that's the number for the boards to access us readily. The election office number is 355-6703, so the general public would contact them.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. All right, back to Jody.
Okay, we're gonna go over the ballots a little bit. The DS200 will accept the ballot in any format. It'll take them head first, footer first, face up, face down. It really makes no difference. The voter themselves are to be entering the ballots into the DS200. And it should be hopefully a very smooth transition. One, I'm going to show you here, we did deliberately overvote. An overvote is if you voted for more than what you were eligible to vote for. So should an individual do that and place it into the DS200, they're going to receive an error message. And it'll tell them exactly what the problem is. It tells them you filled in too many ovals in a particular contest. Down here, it'll tell you that contest and what was done wrong. It'll tell you, for example, that you chose 2 candidates and you're only permitted to vote for 1. At that point in time, the voter might ask you, the poll worker, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do? You, the poll worker, do not touch the cast or return button. Let the voter themselves make that decision. What these buttons mean is if the voter was to hit return, their ballot would come back to them. They would take it to the board. It would be voided. They would be issued a new ballot to be voted and counted. If they chose to cast the ballot, that ballot then would go through the reader to be counted down into the ballot box. Once the cast button is hit, there is no return. All the races on that ballot would count except for the one that was overvoted. So I'm going to show you what a return looks like. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, do not touch the return or cast buttons on behalf of that voter. Let them make that decision. And then this would be voided. If I chose to cast it because, you know what, I'm in a hurry, I don't have time for this, I don't want to make the correction, I, the voter, am hitting cast, down goes my ballot. Now, the message that you just saw, thank you for voting. Please tell the voters not to leave the ballot box until they receive that message. For that exact reason, should there be a problem and I just put my ballot in and walk away, I would not have the opportunity to rectify that problem. So please let the voters know, don't leave the ballot box until you receive the thank you for voting message. The other types of ballots that may be fed through there are the express vote ballots. These are blank ballots whenever you receive them, or just blank express vote cards. The voter would insert that into the express vote. Now, I failed to bring blank ones, so I apologize for that. But when the voter comes to the express vote, as we talked about earlier, the poll worker will select which ballot type they are registered in. There is a nick in the corner of the blank express vote ballots. It must be lined up with the machine in order to accept it. It will not take it if you try to put it in the wrong way. A little something that a voter could do should they choose to. If they marked their express vote ballot on here, and I am visually impaired, so I use the paddle, and I want to be ensured that the machine marked what I intended it to do, you can put that ballot back into the express vote. And then it'll come up and it'll tell you that there's votes on this ballot. You hit next. I, the individual that voted this, would have my earphones on, and the express vote will read all these races and how I voted for them. So I can be sure that I did indeed, the machine did indeed mark the votes that I had intended. Once the voter is done, they'll take this over to the DS200. The DS200 can accept the express vote cards and any orientation as well. We'll see how smoothly this works this time. Yes, and there's the thank you for voting screen. That is pretty much it in a nutshell. When we were talking about comparing the numbered list of voters booklets to the number of ballots cast, it'll be your public count, so that's where you'll see it. I guess from here, I'll just go right to the closing aspect of things. Emergency. Oh, emergency, thank you. Emergency, hopefully there are no emergencies, but should there be a problem with the DS200, call our office immediately. Hopefully it would be something that we could talk you through. It would be a really easy solution. If it is not, we would send a rover out immediately, but in the interim, you're gonna want the voters to have the opportunity to cast their ballots. This is the emergency section of the ballot box. You'll use the same exact key as you have for all the other locks. You'll open it you'll pull down on the aluminum door and reseal the big door. Anyone who casts their ballots then would cast it into this little slot here. And then once your machine has been fixed, it's up and running and you're ready to go, you're going to relock that so that no more ballots can be inadvertently put in there. And we're just going to lift up the aluminum door and relock it. Any ballots that have been placed in the emergency ballot section will remain in there until the polls close at 8 p.m. Once 8 p.m. arrives, anyone who has been in line is permitted to go. If there are people and you see more people coming in, we always suggest sending a poll worker out to the end of the line just to ensure that it does not continue to grow. But anyone in line by 8 p.m. is permitted to vote. Once all of your voters have gone, it's time to shut down. Joyce had stated in the manual, there are shut down checked sheets. If you and another individual, one reads, the other one does, it's almost flawless. So we highly, highly suggest doing that.
After you scan the emergency.
Yes, but this just caught my eye and we failed to hit on I voted stickers. Apparently, well, we know they're extremely popular. One of the questions that we had in an earlier session was, do we have to hand out the I voted stickers? That's up to you, that's your call. I know a lot of voters are very enthusiastic about their stickers. So this is an option that you have that you could just place them on the side of the ballot box and they could help themselves. Polls close at 8 p.m. You had issues earlier in the day. The ballots that were in your emergency section will now be removed. They will be fed through the DS200. Should there be an error that pops up, such as overvoted, always, always, always accept that ballot. Always hit cast. All the ballots have been fed through. It's 8 p.m. The doors are locked. We're ready to get this done. Closing polls, very easy. Using the same keys we used earlier, there's a power button and a close poll. What you're going to want to do is hit close poll. And it'll take a minute or two and then it'll come up that we have told it to close the polls. Are you sure you really want to do this? Absolutely we do. It's been a long day. Close poll. At this time, you will automatically get a status report, which pretty much will mean nothing to you, but then you will automatically receive 4 results tapes. Now this demo will only print out 1 because that's all it's programmed to do, but election day you will indeed receive 4. There are sections for all the poll workers to sign it. All the individuals that are there then will sign the results tape. All right, my results are all printed. It's telling me that it has been successfully closed. What do I wish to do now? I want to finish and turn off. The DS2 or the USB that Joyce was speaking of is housed right here in your DS200. Do not remove this until all the lights are no longer shining and your screen has gone black. In your supply box, you will find a results return envelope. Inside of it will be a USB carrier. So once you remove your USB, I got a black screen, none of my lights are lit, it's time to just pull the USB out. And it'll go in here, and this will go into your blue nylon bag. This is one of the items that are on your orange checkoff sheet. Once we have that finished. You will remove all the ballots that were in the ballot box. You will lock the screen up. And we ask you to please try to remember to unplug it and seal the back of it back up. It makes it difficult for our guys to load the equipment if these are flopping open. And then the express vote is very similar. Again, not hard at all. You'll use the same door on the side. There is an on and off button. And you just push off. You hear it beep. You lock it back up. And then start to disassemble it. Again, I suggest laying it down on the face. This is the sneaky little plug that you have to lift the sleeve in order to remove it. So I'll do my best to do that. So you're going to want to hold the sleeve, lift, and pull, and then it'll come out. Snap the tripod back in place and package it up. You will leave the ballot box with your DS200, your blue vote packs that you receive at the polling location. The express vote will come back to the Willowbank building with you on election night, along with the other supplies that Joyce has stated. I think what I missed.
Nothing pretty much, other than, like we mentioned before, that blue bag with the PPE supplies in is not on that list. So we do ask you to return that with the unused material that's inside.
I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. For anyone that is new, judges of election that feel that they need some more hands-on, anything like that, call me and we can schedule an appointment. I will do one-on-one training sessions to allow people to get a little more hands-on experience. But our building is closed to the public, so it would have to be by appointment only. So if that's something that you're interested in, call the office 355-6703 and ask for Jody.
We did have one question, which was prior to putting all the equipment in the bag or into the, closing it down there, would you like them to sanitize it and wipe it down one final time before they put it in the bags?
That'd be fantastic.
Yep. So Amanda, to your question, that's a yes, please. Thank you. We did have another one. Let's see here. Though it is unlikely if Center County goes into the green phase, will anything change in that way? In the same way, if we were to go into the red phase before Election Day, would anything change? The answer to both, to whatever phase we're in, green, yellow, red, there would be no changes in terms of how we would conduct the elections. If we were to go into the red phase due to cases increasing, we would still proceed with the election.
And polls would be open, yes.
Yes. Okay. Seeing no, we'll give a few more minutes if anybody would like to. Amanda, Joyce had just said that polls are going to be open regardless what phase we're in. We would still be conducting the election on June 2nd. We'll let some, let's see, we have another question here. Oh, thank you. Okay, great. You're welcome. So as we're wrapping up, we'll let some more questions come through. I just wanted to say on behalf of myself and my fellow Board of Commissioners and Board of Elections, a thank you to each and every one of you who are going to be working the polls on Election Day, not just in this election, but in all the other ones you've worked in. We thank you very much. For the new people who are working, this will be a unique election to work, but again, we thank you so much. And just a big thank you as well to our election staff They've been working nonstop as we've seen a dramatic increase in mail-in ballots, a challenge of finding new polling locations for some of the polling locations that had to change. We've had a lot thrown at us over the last few weeks. So we just want to make sure that we are continuing to thank you and thank all the election workers in our office. So what we're going to do is going to turn it over to Joyce and Jody for any closing suggestions and recommendations, and then some closing remarks as well.
I'd like to add one thing that nobody asked when we've omitted it, is on their pay sheet. The question has been asked, do they enter the absentee ballots that's been voted for their precinct? The answer is no. They will be paid according to the categories in which the number that's been cast at the polling place has been voted that day. It also has been removed. Before, there was a line item for the absentee ballots. That is no longer there. However, in addition to that, thanks to the Board of Elections, they raise an additional pay for every voter, or not every voter, everybody serving on election board, and we will handle that internally. It's called a COVID-19 increase, and every worker will receive an additional $80 for working that day, in addition to whatever that they are qualified for by the number of ballots cast. So if you have someone who's worked splitting the day, yeah, that's going to be split accordingly. But they did honor and take into consideration of the virus, and they have authorized that you will receive an additional $80.
Okay. And we have not had any other comments, I'm sorry, any other questions that have come through at this point. So we could go to closing remarks, and if we get any other questions, we can answer them as well.
Okay, thank you for taking your time to participate tonight. And I will say that the board has been very cooperative, and whatever is needed, you know, I can't say enough, really. Jody has worked diligently on selecting the new polling places where we had to move, where we had the poll workers, and she's had assistance from the board as well. And it's been challenging. And the last session I said I've had a few elections about where there's a few changes handed down, but this has really been a challenge. So we will all make it through it. It's very challenging for everybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you from me. I greatly appreciate you and your time and your willingness to be a poll worker on election day. I know a lot of you had to make really difficult decisions as whether or not to do it. So I do greatly appreciate your willingness to be with us. Thank you for taking your time to be with us tonight. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions that you come upon between now and then, do not hesitate to give our office a call. If there's something that you're uncomfortable with, something that you feel that you need, call us, just ask. We will do everything that's in our power to make things as smooth as possible for you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jody. And we just had, let's see, we had a few questions come in. Barbara asked if we got paid, and that would be the poll workers. Yes, poll workers do get paid on election day. It can range anywhere from, I think it's going to be, it might be like,
work a full day, like the minimum's like 120. Partial days would obviously be split based upon the number of hours that you work, but the minimum anyone would get paid would be $120.
Yeah, so this
that does not include the bonus. $80.
No, this does not include that.
So it depends on what the turnout is on election day. It can range anywhere from 120 to 150, but again,
Well, they get 110.
or I'm sorry, that's for the judges of elections.
Yeah.
The poll workers, they would be down here. But again, and then in addition to that is the $80 per
Right.
poll worker.
We will take care of that and add that to the paycheck with a special line item and code. So, yes.
And that'll be across the board, that $80.
Yes.
And let's see. Oh my goodness. Okay, another question is, if a voter shows any flu symptoms or seems really sick, do we handle that in any specific way? You know, if somebody, again, that's why we're encouraging people to vote by mail, because we do not know, you don't know what your health is going to be like over the next 10 days, and we want to make sure that people are able to cast their ballots. If somebody would show up, we would hope that they would have a mask. If it's an extraordinary circumstance and you can tell that they're really coughing and they don't have a mask, I would think that you'd want to offer them one. But we would hope that people would, again, cast their ballot early so they wouldn't have to worry about going to the polls and potentially being sick on election day. But I think you would use your best judgment, and you'd really want to disinfect and sanitize after that voter is out. Anything they touched, anything, you'd want to be very cautious about that. But again, a lot of people with COVID-19 are asymptomatic, meaning they wouldn't show a lot of those flu-like symptoms. So be sure to be disinfecting as much as possible, and again, wearing the masks and the face shields as well. It's a good question. It's a very real question. So thank you for that, Jason. Okay, seeing no other questions at this point. If questions did, we had a question from Amanda. Will rovers have extra PPE or sanitizer if they would need any?
Yes. They will have extra PPE. They will have extra provisional ballot material. They will have extra express vote cards, whatever we can. They'll have extra.
They'll have extra just about everything.
Everything.
Should they run out, we have runners in the building as well. If your rover were to run out of Clorox wipes or masks or anything of the like, they would just let us know and we could get them more supplies.
Great. Okay. We did have a question about disinfecting surfaces, and we have guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of Health and CDC regarding that. We do want to do sanitizing with the disinfecting wipes. Anytime a voter would touch anything, and especially doorknobs, other things in the building, you want to be very, very aware of those, and just make sure that those are being sanitized and looked after throughout the day, to be very mindful of those things. And again, excuse me, if you're more comfortable wearing the gloves when sanitizing, you can certainly do that. But we just want to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. So, and the voting booth as well. Voting booths are another critical thing to sanitize throughout the day. Okay, everybody, we want to thank you once again for joining us today. We're going to conclude the meeting. All of these videos are going to be emailed out. Jody's going to send them out. We're going to put them on YouTube, and probably early next week, they're going to be available for you to watch at your convenience and refer back to. So once again, thank you for everything you're doing. Have a great night and happy Memorial Day. Take care, everybody.